Hello, and thank you for downloading Witness from the BBC World Service. On February the 5th, 1944, the world's first electronic computer, Colossus, was put into action by British intelligence specialists trying to break secret German codes during World War II. Paul Schuster has been speaking to one of the engineers who worked on the project.
It's February the 5th, 1944, and with preparations underway for the Allies' crucial D-Day assault on Hitler's forces in Europe, at Bletchley Park, Britain's top-secret intelligence base in the English countryside, a new weapon is about to be deployed, the world's first programmable electronic computer, Colossus.
The Colossus makes a lot of noise. When we got it to the point where we knew that electronically it was okay, then it was turned over to the mathematicians and the program people who ran their stuff on it and proclaimed it was good, bad or indifferent according to what they thought.
Henry John Kane, known to his friends as John, was an engineer on the Colossus project and helped build some of the computers delivered to Bletchley Park that year. But he started his career working with telephones.
What sparked my interest off in that sort of equipment was a visit to an automatic telephone exchange when I was about 7, and I walked in wonder through this clicking banks of equipment, and I said to myself, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
By age 19, he'd realised his dream, working as a telephone exchange engineer in Battersea, South London. But then, early one morning, he was recruited for a secret mission, which he's never spoken about publicly, until now.
I was asked to hang on, because I was on night duty, hang on in the morning because the inspector wants to see you. So I thought, well, what have I done now, you know? He slapped this piece of paper on the table. I don't know what it's all about, he said. Not a clue. But you've got to go to Dollis Hill, take my toolkit.
Dollis Hill was the location of the Post Office Research Station, very much the Silicon Valley of British wartime invention.
We had a meeting chaired by the then director of Dollis Hill, and he told us that we were to build this equipment called Colossus, and that it was really the top secret project of them all, not to be ever mentioned outside to anybody.
Did you have a sense at that stage about what the machine could do? Did you know what was supposed to go in and come out the other end?
Yes, that was included in the talk by the director. Although I must admit it hadn't got a great deal of operational meaning, if you see my meaning there.
You wouldn't consider yourself a mathematician?
We weren't on the maths side.
But Colossus was being built at the request of codebreakers who very much were on the maths side, because in 1941, Allied listening posts started intercepting a brand new type of encrypted Nazi traffic. By this stage, codebreakers at Bletchley Park had already cracked the Enigma code used by German forces to send secret messages. But this code was something different, harder to crack, and encrypted by a Lorenz machine that was much more complex, as Brian Randall, Emeritus Professor of Computing at Newcastle University, explains.
The Lorenz was, you might say, an even more secret machine. Only a very few of those were made, as far as we know, and they were used for essentially strategic communication of long, very important messages between various high command centres of the German army and Berlin. Indeed, some of the messages were directly to or from Hitler himself.
And unlike Enigma messages, which were sent using Morse code, these were sent using teleprinter technology, meaning they were longer and more detailed, allowing a small number of commanders to swap tactical information. None of the Allies had ever seen a Lorenz machine before. For months they tried to crack its codes, without much success, until mathematician Bill Tutt made a breakthrough.
What had happened was that a German cipher clerk had made a terrible mistake. He realised that he needed to retransmit a message which perhaps had not been received at the other end, and instead of just using the punched paper tape, which would have been generated when he typed it first time, he typed it again. And when he typed it again, he didn't type it quite the same. There were some abbreviations which were different. Something like, the word doctor was spelt out in one message and abbreviated to DR in the other. And by studying those two messages, Bill Tutt managed to work out mathematically exactly how the Lorenz operated. This is an incredible feat. He managed to work out how many rotors the Lorenz had, how many of these little switches around the circumference of each rotor there were, and everything.
That is an amazing feat, but ultimately the rotor position changes, the settings for the machine were changed towards the end of the war every day. That didn't really help unless you could work out quite quickly what setting was in place each day, and you had to do that fresh each 24 hours. How do you go about doing that?
Yes, the hero of the hour is Tommy Flowers. Tommy Flowers was an electronics expert at a time when there were almost no such people in the world. Tommy Flowers realized that you could build a machine which dynamically generated the data which was to be compared with the intercepted information. It was an automatic electronic computer, programmable, and the first in the world.
Because of its size, the new computer was named Colossus, and John Kane was one of those charged with making and maintaining it.
We kept our eyes down on Colossus, and when we'd finished wiring the racks, the whole thing was moved to Bletchley Park, and we followed it there. I remember being somewhat impressed at the main gate, with the sentries armed by what appeared to be wooden clubs, and the double fencing, and a dog inside the fence. That was all very enjoyable.
Maintenance of Colossus was long and steady work for John and his colleagues, but according to Brian Randall, the computers would end up having a major impact on the war.
By superhuman efforts, they built the first production Colossus, which incidentally was 5 times faster than that first one, and got that working by the early hours of June the 1st, 1944, just in time for D-Day. And one of the things that they found out through the successful using of that machines was confirmation that Hitler and his generals had been fooled into believing that the Normandy invasion was essentially a feint, a tactic to disguise the plans for a much bigger invasion in the Calais area. And so the Germans did not send their reinforcements to Normandy, and the Colossus was enabling Eisenhower and his staff to know that the Germans were being fooled. I think it's fair to say that military historians now would credit the work at Bletchley Park with bringing the end of the war forward by at least 2 years.
By the end of the war, there were 10 Colossus machines at Bletchley Park, helping to break enemy codes. Legend has it that, at the end of hostilities, they were all broken up and the blueprints destroyed. But in reality, 2 remained intact and in the hands of British intelligence, as John Kane can confirm.
I got taken up by the Foreign Office and assisted in moving the Colossus. There were still 2 in existence.
But John Kane isn't allowed to tell us what they were used for next. That information is still classified. The story of the Colossus project and those who worked on it remained a secret for decades, and it's only recently that its role in the Allied victory has even become publicly known or recognised.
They issued a medal 5 years ago, but I wasn't much interested in medals. The way I looked at it was that we'd done a job, enjoyed ourselves doing it, and been quite safe. Nobody was dropping bombs on us or doing anything like that.
John is now retired and lives with his family in the west of England.
Paul Schuster. For more first-hand accounts from history and our terms of use, visit bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.